All right, Karen. So we've had a couple questions about what makes escrows fall apart.
Oh, those are some interesting topics, aren't they? And we've certainly experienced that. There are a number of things that make an escrow fall apart. One of the number one things is actually a buyer. A buyer is a reason that an escrow can fall apart. And you may ask, well, how can that be? It's because they can simply just change their mind.
Yeah.
They can get cold feet. They can decide things bother them that really are deal breakers in a transaction. And, some of that doesn't come until we've gotten into the process of the whole transaction. And you think, well, why don't they know these things up front? Sometimes buyers and their cold feet really do happen near the end of an escrow when we think we're going to close.
It's so funny because you are strong enough, you're definitive enough about a property in order to put forth your offer. And I mean, in California, that is a lot of pages of paperwork that you are signing your name to, and you've gotten a loan potentially. You put your earnest money into escrow.
Good faith. Yes.
That's a lot of steps. You don't think about people changing their mind after they've gone through that. I mean, if you've gone through all of that, you think you're kind of moving forward. But
well, and that's so true. And so for it to fall apart in those last hours, those last days, it is quite a shock. And it actually takes you back a moment. Even as realtors, we have to regroup. We have to see sometimes, can we fix? Can we repair? Can we make this transaction work? And a lot of times we can. Cold feet is one thing, but sometimes when it's a property issue, we can fix that. We can credit something. We can come to an answer. So you really have to assess the reason why it's falling apart. But
well,
we do have those issues.
A lot of times there is a monetary value for that issue to become a non-issue.
So true. So we have to get very creative, but sometimes that doesn't always save the transaction either. They do fall apart. And there are other issues that come up as well. What about people that actually have something significant happen, like losing a job? Yes,
a lot of life changes. And it's so funny because, some people, if they're inexperienced, they don't realize that even just changing a job during the escrow process can throw everything out of whack. Even if you were going to a place with a higher paycheck, because you have to go through all of those checks and rechecks for the loan, sometimes they'll say, "Oh, I don't know if this is
right."
This is
they want
work.
you to be seasoned at that job. They want to have some sort of history and some sort of record to look back. I had that very instant, that situation come up on me, and it was a great job that they were going to take, and they wanted to move into that position. But I said, "No, you have to hold off that job change for 2 weeks. Let's close escrow because." It would not have been able to close because it was completely, that job was completely out of the industry. It wasn't even something similar. There's a big difference going from one industry into the same thing, kind of a lateral move, but completely different. No, that's a deal killer as well.
I know friends, they were in escrow and they were 1 week from closing and the pandemic happened. And so even though they were still employed, technically they weren't working, they couldn't provide this additional proof of income. They're calling the employer, well, I don't know, she's not here, because she can't be. So they lost out. They had already signed their, said they were going to be out of their rental in a week or two. It's a really frustrating process, but seriously, anything can happen.
That's so stressful.
Yeah.
That is so stressful because you're moving forward in good faith and everything is kind of on track, but something like that happens. And the thing that most people don't know is that the day that loan funds, they call and check on your employment and they rerun your credit. So what about people who get very giddy and very happy and they start buying things?
Oh, I know. Well, I got a new house now. I need a new car, or I need a boat because there's RV parking, boat parking,
new appliances.
Yeah.
I mean, we have seen that. And we cannot undo that because now you've extended yourself. We've got a larger balance of loan debt, and that loan debt ratio can really bite them.
Well, particularly in this market, because prices are so high and our interest rates are right there teetering. And so a lot of people can just barely afford the house that they're trying to buy. And you throw an extra couple $100 on that credit card, and that could just throw the whole equation out of whack.
Well, even thousands when we're talking about vehicles.
Yeah, true.
We get feeling very good. But you know what? If we can give you any bit of info or any, advice, don't buy anything. Nothing.
Just buy your groceries. And that's it.
Don't put anything on the credit cards. But it's amazing what really can make our escrows fall apart. Sometimes when things are going along well and you don't expect things to happen, then you have the unexpected. Like maybe the seller goes away for the weekend. We're a week out from closing. And you know what goes often? The refrigerator ice maker.
Oh, yes.
The floors, I can't tell you how many wood floors have been ruined by those ice makers that decide to burst when no one's home. And now we have a bigger issue because now we have damage to the property. We have damage to the property, and now who's going to be responsible?
Right.
This is now a big issue, so it's insurance. And now we maybe make a claim, but the sellers are leaving, but now it could pose a bigger problem. When's this going to get fixed? How's it going to get fixed? Can we get my loan? And then what about getting insurance later for the buyer? This opens up a can of worms. And I'm going to tell you, things happen.
Yeah.
Things happen.
Well, and it's not sometimes just a monetary issue, because like you said, this could be an issue now for getting insurance on the property going forward. Is that going to be another couple $100 a month? Is that going to be an issue that they were going to be able to fund you, but now we have to find a different insurance company? And the property itself now has this mar on it. And sometimes that can just psych a buyer out.
It really can. And then not to mention, we do have to find out about any claims within the last 5 years. So here we are with a claim, and your buyer is just getting started.
Yeah.
Even just getting insurance has been kind of tricky over the last few years because of the fire situation and being Southern California and having so many issues that way. We even came across something the other day with a property in the hillside that needed to make sure that the city had run a drone over to make sure that the fire clearance and it was all within their now specified standards. And that wasn't even new to me. I'm like, okay, so things are changed. So insurance is a big deal, and we used to get that the last day or two before we closed escrow.
just call and get some. Call and get some insurance. But and I feel like that factors into the loan too now. Instead of them just estimating the cost of insurance, they need to know, especially if it's on a hillside or near a fire burn area, if there is any indication that is going to be in the thousands of dollars.
That's significantly higher.
Yeah.
Significantly higher. So all things that really can pose a problem for us as we move to close that we don't really anticipate in the beginning of things. We want to look at the property, make sure it looks good. We don't have any broken this or, no termites. But there are bigger issues that can really mess up our escrows and prevent a transaction from closing.
Well, and another thing in Southern California, of course, you've got earthquakes. And that can significantly affect a property.
Foundations.
Yeah.
Foundations. We can have, if you walk into a property and see cracking at windows, stress. We see a lot of concrete cracks, but again, it moves, soil moves. It's not what you think it is, and people get very concerned about that. Some cracks and some things like that you have to be concerned about, but others you don't. So it does take a trained professional to know.
Yeah.
But these things can scare a buyer.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and that escrow you had where the sellers went away for the weekend and the fires came and the house was gone.
And then we don't have a house.
You can't sell a house that's burned down.
It isn't there. So you have a seller that sold a house, but because it was right before it recorded, the buyers pulled out. Obviously, because there's no house to buy.
Right.
So you have to unwind the whole loan. What a process. Would have never imagined something like that happen, but things do happen oddly. So these are just things that are pretty much normal in our world.
Yeah,
we've had buyers that have liens on them, buyers that have lawsuits. You're looking at the property, you're looking at everything there, and all of a sudden it's back at the buyer. The buyer has a child support lien that nobody knew about. And those things have to be paid. So now they don't qualify for a loan.
Poof, just like that.
So it's a little scary, and sometimes, we don't always know this information up front immediately. It takes a while. That's why these escrows can go 30 and 45 days. There's a lot of things that can, a lot of hurdles to get over, and a lot of problems that pop up. And you move forward, and you really try to do the very best you can, but you have to prepare for these surprises.
And they really are. They can be surprises. Sometimes you just have a feeling about a property. This one we had recently, I had a feeling they were going to back out. I just knew it, and I didn't want to accept it. But
that's so cool. You're absolutely right. Sometimes you kind of know what you know, but we put it in the back of our mind going, no, you're not going to do that. You're not.
Of course.
Buyer
you
having
wouldn't
cold
do that
feet.
on me.
No.
Yeah. Sometimes
they do their investigations. They check the property out. We love the location. We love the house. We love everything about it, and it's the right fit. Why would somebody back out? You just have to scratch your head and go, that doesn't make sense, but it happens.
It happens.
It happens, and actually happens quite a bit. This is a big deal. When you purchase a property, this is a huge moment. This is probably the biggest asset to most people that you will have. We were talking thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars. People do get scared.
Yeah.
They do.
Well, and in California, these are $1 million decisions.
That's true.
For even the most modest of house.
And I have to say, true, that when you start looking at the costs and you start looking at your payment, I'm sure that causes a few sleepless nights up front. But sometimes that can cause a person to make a decision. And sometimes I don't think it's always in the smartest choice. Because you know why? Because I've heard, I should have bought that house I saw years ago. I should have. We're never looking back down memory lane. If you let it go, you let it go. We cannot measure everything that you want to look at against the house that you walked away from. But I have heard that many times. Should have bought that. Should have. We don't go back.
You made the decision moving forward.
So sometimes cold feet can really come back and haunt you. Unfortunately, those are a lot of things that happen to us. Those are our own personal experiences.
Right.
Why escrows don't close.
Another thing that some people are not aware of is when someone passes away, it now becomes a trust sale or a probate sale, and that can throw a whole monkey wrench into things because sometimes they need court approval. Sometimes they don't need court approval. If they need court approval, is the attorney submitting the correct paperwork? If they're not submitting the correct paper, then it's just, and it can be months and months and months depending on the court system. And so you think you're going to buy this house, and it's going to be a 30-day escrow, and it turns into 6 months, a year long. You're still trying to buy this property.
You are so right on target with that. That just happened with one, and you're right. You think, we don't need the court approval, and that's what you're being told.
Yeah.
But then you find out we do need that, and then we need much more. And the process goes on. And what we can't give you is a definitive time, a definitive date that it's yours.
Right.
You can, let your lease up on the place, on your condo or your rental. It's a nail-biting moment because we can't line that all up. And then on top of it, with this whole COVID behind us, the courts were closed.
Right.
You can't, it's not like it used to be. You can't just go in and have the paperwork done and signed. And that's actually was one of my recent situations, is that we're waiting on the court to give us back that paperwork. So it's just in limbo.
Well, and with the changing market too, these prices could be going up and up and up. You're still stuck under contract. Like, buyer probably still wants that property because that is a lower price than it is for today. But then, you're just stuck. And what do?
We can't give them that particular answer. When it comes to when the courts and law and things are going to happen, unfortunately, that's when attorneys and probate attorneys get involved. But it gets there. But it's so funny is by the time you get over the finish line, it was such a hair-raising race. That moment you're supposed to feel happy, you're a little frustrated and worn out.
I'm glad I got it now. What do I do with it?
But there's a lot that happens.
And there's another one too with tenant issues. So now that we have these changing tenant laws, sometimes you buy a place and there's tenants in it, and you think, okay, well, the tenants are going to move out, and then we'll move in. But sometimes that's not always the case.
No, and that we're talking about tenant laws and their rights. And sometimes, like, we just had that listing that we were talking to the owner, and he wanted to make sure that the new buyer took his tenants, because it's just easier to pass that along. But sometimes those buyers don't want the tenant problems.
Right.
They want you to facilitate in making sure we get a vacant property. And you're absolutely right with the tenant rules and laws and regulations. Not so easy.
It's not as easy to get them out. No.
So, and then if you have those low rents, when you've had somebody there a long time, it can pose for a very difficult transition. And sometimes those break apart too, because they don't have the numbers. The numbers aren't there for that prospective buyer, especially today with the market trends and the prices we're seeing. So it all works into that same equation that you were talking about. It has to make sense, but it poses and gives us so many problems to solve.
Well, and it's interesting too, because some buyers are uneducated, and so they get into thinking they're getting a property, and then all of a sudden they realize there's property taxes, and I had no idea it was that much money, or insurance, I had no idea it was that much money. And then you're starting to break down the numbers, maintenance, a gardener, a pool person, whatever it is, and then you realize, wow, I really can't afford this property.
Right, the numbers don't work. Take the property taxes. Sometimes there's assessments, special assessments. Sometimes there's HOAs, Mello-Roos. You add it all up, and you're like, wow, I had no idea. So you're right. Sometimes we have to really educate those buyers, because they think they're savvy, but they're not.
No.
So you really have to help them make sure those numbers make sense, and then all of a sudden you can get into escrow, and they're going, yeah. This doesn't work, and there we are again with an escrow that's falling apart.
It's difficult for us as agents too, because as much as we can look forward and foresee these things, we try to educate our buyers. We try to get everything a solid transaction. But then sometimes our buyers just make a weird decision, or our sellers get freaked out about something, and we just have to move forward. And unfortunately, we have to deliver bad news.
Sometimes we do. How about the request for repairs when that doesn't work out? So if we have a buyer wanting all kinds of repairs because they're nervous, they've seen their home inspection, and sometimes the buyers are sensitive, and they think everything needs to be repaired, and they don't realize these home inspections aren't for us to give the seller a laundry list of things to fix. And then the seller gets offended because my house is perfect. And now we're at odds with each other. Again, this is where we come in and kind of smooth it. But that can be a deal breaker as well.
Right.
And I've seen people fight over the silliest, smallest things.
Yeah, trim in a house.
And if you don't fix that trim,
the silicone around the sink.
Right. And so this is where we step in, and we're pretty good at finessing and making these things okay, so that everybody feels that they've, win. But these are the deal breakers, the request for repairs. If you don't fix what I want, I'm not buying. Seller, if I'm not fixing anything, it's as is. So this is where our great negotiation really helps us.
Right. Well, these are just a few of the things that can go wrong in an escrow. But every escrow is unique. Every buyer-seller situation is unique.
It's true.
And
I've been around a long time, and I've never seen two be the same.
Yeah.
Ever. It's like a recipe. Totally different ingredients, different people, different personalities, different properties. It's never the same. Makes it exciting, but really, as long as you're a problem solver, you never know how it's going to reveal itself. Always exciting.
That's true. It pays to be a problem solver in this market and in these interesting escrow situations.
And to keep calm and to keep everything moving smoothly, even though you may be all excited inside.
Right.
You have to be in charge and make sure everybody is moving forward calmly and then making an educated decision and making sure it all comes together.
Can't count that commission check until it arrives.
Never do that. Never. Ever. But that's the good stuff about escrows,
Yep.
And that's just our experience. There's a lot more out there.
That's true.
Just you and me.
Right.